find you?
Dennis. One of the guys that I went to school with, high school, and Captain Harry Blake, he's a general now. Inaudible. Question. Is he still on active duty? Dennis. No, he's retired. He was just a general in the military school, National Guard, I don't know. He never was really a good friend of mine. We lived across the street from each other when we were kids. Question. So that's how Stan found you. He was the first guy to talk to you. Dennis. Bob Shirky brought him up there to see me.
Pause.
Question. There's a reference in here to you having some years later, I think, talked about a pediatrician that you knew, a guy that was stationed. Dennis. I can't find his picture, and I don't remember his name. I ran into him when I was fishing up in Colorado, and we ran into each other. Question. This was a guy who was at the time stationed here? Dennis. He was here, and they called him in. He said that was out of his field, and he didn't want anything to do with it. Question. They actually called him in and asked him to take a look at what had been retrieved, or... Dennis. He said they called him in. I don't know. He said, but I said that was out of my field and I didn't want anything to do with it. That's what he told me now. Question. Did you get the sense that he knew more than he was telling? Dennis. I would say so, yeah. I'm sure they did. A lot of those guys out there did. Question. You don't remember his name? Dennis. I don't remember it, but I did run into him. Somewhere I've got his name. Question. Have you talked with anyone else? Had you during that time before you got into all this? Dennis.
No, I wouldn't have even talked to him about it.
You brought it up and wanted to know whatever happened on the UFO business. Question. It was at his initiative. Dennis. I didn't bring it up. I told him I didn't know any more about it than he did. He said, well, that was strictly out of my field and I didn't want to get involved in it. That was about it. But he brought it up. I didn't ask him. Question. He was just curious about what happened. Dennis. Wanted to know whatever happened to him. Question. That's about all I've got. End of section 13. Recording by Aaron Bennett.
Section 14 of the Roswell Report. Case closed by James McAndrew. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Aaron Bennett. The Roswell Report, Case Closed by James McAndrew. Appendix C, Part 3, Interviews. Transcript of interview with Alice Knight, alleged second-hand witness to crash site 175 miles northwest of Roswell. Footnote. Excerpted from raw footage used to prepare the video Recollections of Roswell Part 2, Washington, D.C., Fund for UFO Research, 1993. End of footnote. Knight. I remember that he saw, one time I went to visit, and I don't remember whether it was before my husband and I married or after. I don't recall the date. But he said that he saw a UFO fall. He was out working in the field, and I understand that he was out on the St. Augustine Plains. He went over that way, and it fell, and he got nearly to the site, and there was a group of people on a archaeological hunt, and they were over there. I don't remember how many people he said, but they got nearly up to the UFO, but it was close enough that you could see some creatures. He said they didn't look like human beings out there. And along came government cars and trucks. Question. Now, by government you mean Knight. I guess it was government. You know, as I said, it was a long time ago. And someone came along and I understood it. I don't know whether it was Army or what. I think he just termed it government trucks, and they told him to go on back and forget they ever saw anything, and that's all I recall. End. Transcript of interview with Vern Maltese. Alleged second-hand witness to crash site 175 miles northwest of Roswell. Footnote. Excerpted from raw footage used to prepare the video Recollections of Roswell Part 2, Washington, D.C., Fund for UFO Research, 1993. Maltese. Pete, the eyewitness, had been coming back from one of his field trips. He'd run onto a flying saucer that had burst open and there were 4 beings on the ground, and that he was surveying the site. Archaeological group from the University of Pennsylvania, telling us that there were about 4 or 5 people with this group. As they were just starting to look things over really closely, the military moved in and gave them a briefing not to say anything about it and keep quiet, and it was in the national interest to get out of there. Question: what was his feeling about what it was that he had experienced? Maltese: he had no qualms about what it was. He said it was a vehicle from outer space. There wasn't any question. The beings on there were not exactly like human beings. Question: how did you... Maltese: similar but not exactly. Question: how did he describe them? Maltese: he described them being about 3.5 to 4 feet tall, very slim in stature, and with their heads were hairless, with no eyebrows, no eyelashes, no hair. Sort of a pear-shaped head with the top of the head being smaller. Any other characteristics about their appearance? Maltese: only one thing that he mentioned. The hands were not covered. They had 4 fingers. And transcript of interview with James Ragsdale, alleged first-hand witness to crash site north of Roswell. Footnote: James Ragsdale, interview with Donald R. Schmidt, January 26, 1993. Ragsdale, James, eyewitness transcript, 26 January 1993. Question: so you were actually out there? Ragsdale: yeah. Question: do you remember the name of the ranch it was on? Ragsdale: it was on... Fisher? Question: was it north of here? Ragsdale: yes, back out here. Question: northwest? Just take your time. Ragsdale: it was Foster. Some discussion with his wife about who owned the ranch. Let me see what you've got, referring to the photographs. That's the place right there, identifying the location from the pictures. Question: what area? Ragsdale: it seemed to me that that place belonged to Fisher, but it sold to somebody else. Somebody else bought that. That's how come I was out in that area. And we was out there, and she's dead, and all the guys I showed the stuff are all dead. It's amazing what all went on. Discuss our book in the museum. Question: showing one of the pictures, so you think this looks like... Ragsdale: that looks like the place. Question: as far as the ranches go, driving around at that time, it could have been most any ranch, right? This would have been in 47. You were with this woman? Ragsdale: yeah, we were camped out there. Question: you were camping? Ragsdale: yeah, I would say half of it. I would say that only about half of it. Just half of you really couldn't tell what it was. What you could still see, where it hit. I think it was 2 spaceships flying together, and one of them came down, and the other one picked up what they could and got out of there. Question: is it possible that because it was hit by lightning that it broke up and part of it went down? Discussion of the Mac Brazel sighting. Ragsdale: but it was either dummies or bodies or something laying there. They looked like bodies. They weren't very long, over 4 or 5 foot long at the most. We didn't see their faces or nothing like that, but we had just got to the site and heard the army, the sirens, all coming, and we got into a damn Jeep to take off. We had to hold a fence up to go on to another ranch to come out from there. Question: how far would you say this from town here? Ragsdale: 30 miles, 40 miles? Question: in a northwesterly direction? Ragsdale: right up here. Discuss the pictures again. Question: were there any buildings? Ragsdale: no, you couldn't see nothing. You go up on top of the hill. It was a hill, referring to the picture. You could see the stuff right here. Question: the object, the craft, what was left on it? In these photos, where was the object? Ragsdale: along this right here. It looked to be about half of a round, because around the edges I had 2 great big pieces. That's what they got when they stole the car. You could take that stuff and wad it up and it would straighten itself out. I never seen anything like it. Looked like something between a plastic. Looked like carbon paper. Question. That was the color of it? Ragsdale. Yeah, carbons. That was the color of it. Sure was. Between plastic and, hell, I don't know. Let's see how to describe. One piece we had, you could take it and put it in any form you wanted and it would stay there. You could bend it in any form and it would stay. It wouldn't straighten back out. Question. You pick those up from the ground? Ragsdale. Yeah. Question. You threw them in the Jeep? Stuffed them in your clothes? Ragsdale. Yeah, and then we heard all of them coming. Question. How many vehicles? How much commotion did you hear as they came in? Ragsdale. Oh my God, it was 2 or 3 6x6 army trucks, a wrecker and everything. And leading the pack was a 47 Ford car with guys in it, MPs and stuff in it. We had the windshield down on the Jeep and we stayed in the weeds and stuff. And we came on back down to where we was camped at. Question. So you watched for a while? Ragsdale. Yeah, sure did. Question. What was there? Ragsdale. They cleaned everything all up. I mean cleaned it. They raked the ground and everything. I mean they cleaned everything. Question. You didn't stay there that long? Ragsdale. No, but they had a truck. I would say it was 6 or 8 big trucks besides the pickup, weapons carriers and stuff like that. Question. What kind of guard did they have? Did they surround certain areas? Ragsdale. They had MPs all. They got way out in the field. They had people all along this ridge. They drove up in here. We was back over here, this grass here. Question. So if you were back here, could you see the activity down here? Ragsdale. You couldn't see too much of what you could tell. As soon as they got there, they began gathering the stuff up. We were hidden in what you call buffalo grass. Question. Did you see any behavior around the bodies? Ragsdale. Question. You couldn't see down to that level? Ragsdale. Yeah. Question. Did you see any activity near the craft? Ragsdale. No. Question. The angle of the craft, was it flat? Was it tipped? Ragsdale. One part was kind of buried in the ground, and part of it was sticking out of the ground. About like that. Question. About a 30-degree angle? Yeah, and I'm sure that was bodies, either bodies or dummies. Question. Why do you say dummies? Ragsdale. The federal government could have been doing something because they didn't want anyone to know what this was. They was using dummies in those damn things. They could use remote control. Question. So you thought that it could have been an experimental craft? Ragsdale. After I came to town, showed Frank Willis and his son, he's dead, the Blue Moon beer joint over on the old Dexter Highway, Jeep behind my car. Question. Did you still have the scrap in the Jeep? Ragsdale. Yeah, I showed it to him. He said I would just keep my mouth shut. He said, hell, there is no telling where that came from. Question. So you didn't think it was from outer space? Ragsdale. No, we didn't even think about outer space back then. Question. When was the first time that you thought that maybe this was something more? Ragsdale. It was about 3 weeks. It came out that a spaceship had crashed at Roswell. About 3 weeks. But it could have been out longer than that there. But see, I worked in Carlsbad. Question. But you first saw there had been a newspaper article about 3 weeks after. Ragsdale. Oh hell, it was 2 or 3 weeks before I caught up on it. A spaceship. What I hear is they guarded that place for a long time out there. Because me and another fellow went out there and you couldn't get... They had the road sealed off. It was a month or so after. Question. And they still have...